in the Duchy of East and West Alveole, 8 days after the massacre at Dragstaff Gulch. Nothing ever changes in the Bowerlands except the seasons. In 2 weeks since the first thaw, the green-capped mountains to the east have trapped their third thunderstorm, hanging over the rolling green and terraced hills like a deep, dark gray canvas. The days of rain have created a lattice network of improvised creeks that weave down the slalom-like landscape and feed into the Great Stone River. This is mineral-rich rainwater, carrying ocean brine and dust from the western desert alike. It is said that if one were to boil off 10 gallons of it, a cup of fresh planting soil would remain. When a dry week comes, and it surely will, the softened soil will be turned and burned by the firekeepers of Agui and the many animal faces of the Bower folk in order to be planted, harvested, and eventually freeze over as another year passes, as has been done for centuries. What has not existed for centuries are the Bowerborn, folk deities who sprung up from the Bowerlands some 140 or 50 years ago. Living among the people, the Bowerborn are each a patron of some aspect of Bower life. Despite their many efforts to shape the future of this land, they have only managed to fold themselves into it like berries in bread dough. Within the cottage of one such Bowerborn, we see a lone figure tending to the matters of the house. This patron is as much of an outcast as one can be in a culture rich with community. Now that the soil is softer, it is only a matter of time before there comes a sheepish knocking at his door, when at last the very folk who would not look at him in the gathering house would come begging for aid. Eol, why do people only come to you at night looking for help?
I think that there's a reasonable trepidation approaching somebody who works as closely with death as I do. To say that the people here love the Undying Empire is to say that they breathe, though the air is foul. They live here, and they have for generations. This has been the Undying Empire forever. We grow their crops, they take their share. We move on. The seasons turn. And, of course, when crimes of a capital nature are committed, the various magistrates of the Ordo Principium Legis pass judgment, and that judgment is handed off to the auspices of the Archduke Leostav Oberon, who then passes down his sentencing in accordance with imperial law. And it is frequently my unfortunate duty to see that sentencing brought to fruition. Nobody likes to be seen about with the Archduke's axeman. However, when the dead need buried, they know where to find me.
Why is the burial of the dead a problem here?
An interesting question that has a number of different answers. Here, it can be a problem because when the rains come in the spring, the soil becomes very loose, very wet. At times, if you do not properly weight the bodies or inter them above ground in some of the most low-lying areas, you may find that they have returned to the surface of their own accord. The ground itself passing up the bones of those who have long since been laid to rest. Of course, taken another way, the burial of the dead can be a problem because the Archduke needs men, needs soldiers, needs ghouls, bodies. In life, the only thing that a man could be said to truly possess is his body, and his only property the sweat of his own brow. Those privileges are not always extended once that life expires.
Tell us about Eol. What does he look like? How does he carry himself? What does he do alone in his home during the heavy rains?
Eol is about a 6-foot tall ram. He's got rather thick but tightly curled horns on either side of his head. I think he hasn't shaved yet from the winter where he let his will grow thick, help keep warm when the snows come. And generally wears dark clothing. He has an official black suit, like a black tunic with a black cord that he wears at public functions, and then obviously there's the red hooded cloak that he wears when he is performing his official duties. But even when he's not working, so to speak, he'll wear darker clothing, a lot of homespun, things that are rather rough and at this point worn. I think the current clothes that he's wearing are almost 7 to 10 years old. Were passed on to him from a grandmother who was very grateful to see 3 of her grandchildren laid properly to rest so that they could not be made to continue to serve the Archduke. Usually when he's out in public, his posture is very rigid, although he normally keeps his gaze averted down. He tends to look closer to people's knees, or not necessarily in their eyes. He doesn't really care to make people uncomfortable and isn't necessarily trying to intimidate anybody, but he's also big, and he cuts an imposing figure, and he's also not trying to mitigate that. As he's sitting at the table in the cabin that he grew up in, that the man who, for all intents and purposes, was his father, this has been the executioner's cabin for a good few generations now. As he's sitting at the table, he has his axe sitting on the table. He is examining a spade to ensure that it's in good condition and making kind of minor repairs to it, while also lying open on the table is the Gravekeeper's Handbook. It's a very old and well-worn book. He has it memorized. He's read through it so many times, but contained within are every known funeral rite and burial practice, or anything that has to do with the passage from life to death that has been collected by the Gravekeepers over the last few centuries is in this book. As he reads through it, he turns a page and reads something, and you see his brow furrow a little bit, and he reaches up and he pulls a pen or a quill out of an inkwell, and he scratches out a few words and makes a note or two in the margin, and then he sprinkles some sand on it and brushes that off so it dries quickly, and then he goes back to his spade.
Throughout the evening, in fact, throughout most of the evenings for the last 2 weeks, you have gone to sleep with the frustratingly loud rapping of a flitwood tree's branch against your exterior window just inside of your living room. It seems about every gust sends about 3 or 4 tap, tap, taps directly into your ears. And finally, after several such tap, tap, taps, the tapping turns into an incredibly loud knocking, as if an entire branch had fallen off and was currently trying to beat down your window. There's 1 set of knocks, and then 2 before you realize it's not coming from the window anymore. It's coming from your front door. Amid a peal of thunder, there is another cracking of the door. Someone is desperately trying to get your attention.
Eel slowly stands up and he walks to the door. When he gets to the front door, there is a spade, a good solid oak staffed spade that is being used laid across the door as a bar, and he lifts it up with one hand to let the door swing open.
You set one hand against it, and you hear, whispered desperately through the howling wind, a raspy, "Help! Help!"
I open the door.
Collapsing into your threshold is the golden cloak and bronze helm with a shield and blade at his side of a full-ass brazen, who immediately proceeds to begin bleeding out at your front door.
I look outside Do I see anybody else? Any other figures?
Let's see what you see. Why don't we take this puppy for a spin? Let's test this ride out. So the way we roll is there is a grid in the sheet that I linked you. The table is you choose how much control versus how much impact you want. And the scale goes from D4 to D20. The higher your control, the more likely you are to succeed at your task. But contrasting, you will have a lower impact, meaning the value of your success will be lower. You can also go for a wild shot in the dark and have a tremendous success.
Okay. First roll of the system. Is it a 2D or a 1D roll?
I guess you just roll both at once, right? Why not?
I'm going to take the D6 control because this is just like a quick glance outside. And I feel like if I see something, it's probably going to be important.
Okay. Yeah, toss it.
So 1D6, 1D12?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a 6 on the 6 and a 9 on the impact.
All right. That will be sufficient to succeed. I had set a threshold of 5 for that. And let's see what a 9 gets us for our impact. There's some really good examples in here. So this is the equivalent of an outcome of you can convince an untrained animal to carry you for a short time, or you understand complex legal situations on a level of an attorney who specializes in the matter. So you know your lands better than anyone in the world. You grew up here. They have been in your family for generations. You know the walkway. You know every stone, blade of grass, puddle of mud, a broken fence post, repaired fence post, rebroken and re-repaired fence post, the entire thing. You have dug these grounds, you have filled them back in, you have landscaped them, and you have restarted. In your many, many, many decades of life, you know this place perfectly. Something is off about the scene, and it's hard to make out. You can see the muddy footfalls where the brazen missed the path to your threshold. He didn't walk on the cobblestone. He walked in the sticky mud getting in there. So you can see the deep footfalls. One pair at first, but off in the distance, you can definitely tell, especially as you get close to the tree line, there was a second set. It would appear to you that if the brazen was not alone, or if there was a pursuer, that person broke off once the brazen reached the edge of your land.
Eel bends down, and it's a little bit like you would almost expect, even for as big as Eel is, you would expect there to be a little bit more effort in what it takes to drag him the rest of the way into the cottage. But like Eel just not superhuman by any stretch, but drags him in, shuts the door, puts the shovel back across to bar the door, and then grabs the one off of the table that he had been working on and puts that in as well. And then it turns to this bleeding man.
You can tell he's bleeding from several places. One of them is clearly venous. One of them is clearly like a free-flowing bleed from somewhere underneath the armor. You don't see a lot of direct wounds on the armor, but it is scratched up to hell.
Is he gonna make it?
Roll for a triage.
Roll for triage. So Eel knows a fair whack of anatomy as part of his work. So I'm going to call that... Actually, so I've got a double set of dice here. Should my green dice be my impact or my control dice for this run?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not in the room with you, friend. Oh, okay, black? So you have green or black?
Yes.
Obviously, green is impact.
Green is impact?
Clearly.
Okay. So we're going to give... I'm going to take this D10 in control, and then that gives me a D8 for impact. Probably not great odds, but hey, you know. Okay. I got a 7 on the control and a 3 on the success.
Oh, cats. The equivalent of a 7 in control is spotting a lie from a competent bluffer with high stakes on the line. So I'm feeling really good about that. And then what was your impact?
Just 3.
Just 3?
Finding a key, you spend a few minutes searching before spotting it, or catching a bottle. You fumble slightly, but manage to catch it without breaking or dripping.
I'll throw this out here. You are able to safely remove his armor, his helmet, his breastplate, his shield, his slab machete, big freaking, basically like a giant, like 3-foot long rectangle of a bronze sword. Nasty work. And you do reveal what appears to be a wound that would be lethal. He's got a gushing venous wound coming in from underneath his arm where he got a nasty gash, like right by the shoulder. Probably missed his artery by a little bit. You're pretty sure if you can staunch that, which is not hard, that he's probably going to be okay. But you seem to remember, just knowing what you know about the Empire, having lived in Imperial lands, that there's some trick to helping Brazen heal, and you can't remember what it is.
Eel pulls his executioner's cloak from a hook next to the door and starts pushing it into the staunch the wound. Your kind, you have a way to make yourselves better. Yes?
The Brazen flitting in and out of consciousness, you barely see sort of the shimmering bronze of his eyes. Brazen don't have traditional eyes. They literally look like steampunk mechanical eyes, and even their irises open and close like camera apertures. His are very tiny and beady on the off moments that you are able to see them, and he just mutters, the cloak. The cloak.
Does he have a cloak?
Yeah, he's wearing a gold cloak.
Okay. I unfasten it from around his neck and start trying to staunch the wound with that.
He shakes his head and weakly with his good arm reaches and grabs the cloak and gives it a shake, and you can hear that he has wrapped something on inside the lining of it. Something large that you would miss, mostly because he was wearing the thing and he's a pretty bulky guy. Like, Brazen are big dudes. And he's like rattling it, and you see what appears to be a very sizable jet black scroll case with an Imperial seal inside.
Magic words, the light of the Empire, that is what, the light of the Emperor, that is what will make you well?
Census. Sakari. And then he passes out.
Census Sakari?
Viewers, you can't, I just shrug condescendingly at that prompt.
Eel tucks the name away in his head, gets the wound staunched as best as he can, goes to find something, like pulls just a bolt of cloth or an extra blanket that he has that he can use to help staunch the wound a little bit more permanently. But as soon as he gets back to where the Brazen is, he pulls the scroll out of the lining of the Brazen's cloak and wraps it in his now extremely bloody red executioner's cloak, and then pushes it into a corner. Because this is odd.
So you intend to remove the scroll from the container?
No, the entire case.
Oh, just the case, okay.
We're going to tend to the guy, and then we'll figure out what the hell's up with this scroll.
Yeah. He is out. He is looking pale. That being said, you are pretty confident in your dressing. I'm not going to make you roll for dressing a wound like that. I feel like, well, honestly, like pretty much everyone in the Bowerlands knows some first aid, especially if they've been around for as long as you. I mean, this is a very agrarian and community-focused place, so like people know how to staunch a wound. This comes up.
Yeah.
What do you do next? You have a passed-out Brazen in your cottage.
Eel looks at the executioner's cloak and is like, oh, that's the best one that I have. Man, I am not a doctor, and this man is dying. I think when it looks like he's stable enough, Eel just kind of like stands and looks down at him and says, hold on as best you can. I hope to not have to provide any further services of mine when I get back. And I think he gets like another, this is just like a dark green cloak, and pulls it up over his head and is gonna go to the nearest person who would actually know. I guess, how bad is it outside?
Oh, it's gnarly. This is day 3 of a real squall. It's also the dead of night.
Yeah. So, God, given the propensity for flash floods in the area and the threat of lightning strikes, I feel like, I mean, I would be fine. Getting a doctor out here would probably be, especially because the nearest person who knows this kind of like medicine or surgery is a wise woman who lives about 2 miles away. She's getting on in age, and it would be a bit of a trick to get her here. I think what Eel does is he goes over to a chest and he pulls out a sewing kit, starts heating one of the needles over a candle flame as he threads it with kind of the sturdiest wire that he has, and flips the Gravekeeper's handbook to the passage on Zalo, just in case.
Yeah. I think this is a roll, definitely, if we're doing a little bit of trauma, if we're doing some suturing. Did you say metallic thread?
Well, no. Do I have wood wire? No. I think what he feels is the best thing to use is a very, very fine. God, what would we use for leather? Would we have leather?
Why wouldn't he have leather? Yeah, absolutely. You would potentially have leather and leather repair. For leather, you would use leather thread, and then you might even, you might use some kind of wiring or like a wired thread because it has to be pretty sturdy stuff.
Yeah. We'll just say that he's got appropriate stuff. The things that what he has is better suited for tool repair, but it's like, he works around big blades a lot. He's been around for a minute, so he basically knows what he's doing on this. We're going to call that a D8 is what we're taking for the control, which will give us a D10 on impact. So I got a 5 on control and a 7 on impact.
It's sloppy, but you get lucky. The actual suturing is not good. It's sufficient. It does close the wound. One thing that you notice is that the material that you had, you happened to pick the right one. What you picked was a thread with wire that runs through it, used for patching leather. And you notice as you're suturing, the wire actually slips out of the thread, like it pulls through it as if magnetized, and begins to close in around the wound itself. As if it was incorporating itself into the brazen's body. And that's when it clicks. Oh, right. You use metal.
Yeah, obviously.
Preferably bronze, but...
He's got a copper pot. Like, it had gotten a hole in it. I think he had found it somewhere. I was like, oh, hey, it would be nice to have a good pot around the house. It's got a hole. Oh, I'll just find a tinker that can fix this. And never actually got around to it.
And this was about 47 years ago.
About 47 years ago.
Yeah.
He goes and gets that out, and then just, like, I guess holds the copper pot against the wound.
The wiring seems to have done the job, so the copper pot doesn't necessarily do anything else. You're not sure if it will absorb only the metal it needs, or if, like, you're accidentally going to adhere a copper pot to this guy. It's not entirely sure. You might want an expert on brazen anatomy to figure this out, or you might bash it into pieces and then use the pieces to close up wounds. Brazen have very strange physiology. That being said, as you go to lift the pot to check on any progress, there is another knocking at the door. This one less frantic, more patient.
Well, they're knocking. Eel's having a weird night. I think as he stands up and moves towards the door, he grabs the headsman's axe. It's like, is it a bearded axe?
Oh, almost certainly. It has to be, right? Oh, yeah, it's got to be bearded. Oh, you got like the cutaway. It looks like Gimli's axe.
Yeah, I think so. It's that bearded axe style where it goes down a fair amount. Like the blade itself is long, and it around. So you can hold it right underneath where it attaches, and you're kind of in the cutout on the axe blade. I think he keeps that in one hand, like in his left hand, as he goes, and he takes the shovels off the door and props them up on the other side of the door next to the hilt of a greatsword that's still in its scabbard, and cracks the door open.
A leathered hand pops through the door immediately as it cracks open, holding a string of dead squirrels. Grandson, why are you being dodgy?
Grandfather, it's been an odd night. Eel opens the door.
With a flourish, Grandfather Andis triumphantly strides in the room, soaking wet all the way through his leathers, holding a string of squirrels that he caught out in the wilderness. He hasn't even noticed the brazen yet, all of his eyes directly on you. And he looks at you and says, Grandson Eol, have you been living your virtues?
To the best of my ability, Grandfather.
Well, that's lovely. I thought you might like to have just a little bit of meat tonight.
Wonderful. I've got, I'll have to find a different pot. That one's got a hole in it. Why don't you take them into the kitchen and we'll get them prepared. Please don't mind the man lying on the floor. He's resting.
As you're talking, he thrusts the squirrels into your palms and then walks over to the Gravekeeper's book, scoops it up with one hand and looks at it and says, Zalo, why are we looking at Zalo? And then it is only when you finally say, pay no attention to the man, that his eyes finally cast down on the floor in front of your hearth. And he goes, ah, so you have a visitor then. And he closes the book with one hand, sets it down and says, Eol, don't you know it's impolite to study your guests while you're keeping them?
Oh, I don't think that he minds. I could ask him. Sir, do you mind if I read up on your culture? While you let me know if you find that to be impolite that I read about your culture and your practices while I tend to your wounds. Well, that sounds like a yes to me. My apologies for my rudeness.
Eol, is this your handiwork?
Yes. Who else?
He looks down at the stitches, looks over at you. You scratched him? He is commenting on the fact that he believes that you beat this man within an inch of his life.
No, he came to me like that.
Isn't that what they all say?
Frequently, but it's never been my job to judge, only to swing the axe.
He stands up, looks at you, and says, I know I should ask the obvious question, but I'm more interested in asking a different question. And that is, and he does this all the time.
You can see it in the way that Eel has already rolled his eyes.
What's your take on all this?
All this? We're on day 3 of this rainstorm, which will be very good for the fields. But right now is rather terrible for the graves. This man came to me as a refugee. There was somebody else who was following him who seems to have peeled off in one way or another. You will understand my wariness. Strangers abroad at a time like this. I don't know what to make of any of it.
Well, perhaps we triangulate by asking questions around it. And then he looks at you again, and you know what he's about to ask. He asks this every time, and it makes you want to kill him. What questions does this bring up?
Grandfather, it's never been my job to ask questions.
It's not your job, but it is your duty. You are one of us. Don't worry about what's and how's, where's or when's. Why don't you start with a why?
Because knowing things is dangerous. You understand that, right?
He exasperated takes off his hunting cap. Not why don't you ask questions, my dear, dear grandson, but the whys surrounding this man.
What? Why was he bleeding? He was bleeding because he was stabbed. Why is he here? He's here because he found his way here. Why is he stitched up now? Well, because I stitched him up. When he's feeling better, we can ask him all of the questions that we like. And for me, that's probably none.
And brightly so, but we have an opportunity here because he is not able to answer for himself. And so we can begin to concoct a model of the situation. Yes? I have a question for you.
Oh, of course.
Do Brazen travel alone?
There are stories of lone Brazen, of heroes who have gone out and marched from one side of the continent to the other, but no. Generally, they travel at least in... I don't think I've seen them in a group of any less than 5. I've heard a bodyguard of 2, but no, normally they do not travel alone.
We have a solitary Brazen who was being pursued, as you claim. What do you think maybe happened? He is obviously enjoying this.
I think that something more ferocious than he is got the better of him, or caught by surprise. And I don't want to meet that person, or that thing, or that creature. Perhaps he was turned on by his own company. What you know of that can kill a Brazen? There's not much.
There isn't much. Oh, it's true. Other Brazen, monsters in the wilderness, certain specific ones come to mind. Feral drakes, perhaps? Perhaps it was a feral drake. I saw a feral drake's corpse a few miles from here just 3 weeks ago. What about gray folk?
There aren't any greys in this part.
There aren't usually Brazen in this part either.
You don't need to be that much more ferocious than the thing you're hunting if you are able to take it by surprise. You don't think maybe he fell afoul of hydrangeas somewhere along the way?
Oh, I hadn't even thought of that. That seems bold. I wasn't aware of any bold actions by hydrangeas, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there wasn't one that could have been plotting something. What if it was hydrangeas?
And I'll have
Let's
more very unpleasant work once the conspiracy is overturned. And the next time I see logistic, they'll deny everything, like they always do. Say that they all work as independent cells and that he had nothing to do with it.
So, Andis triumphantly sits down in a comfy chair, crosses his legs, and sort of sets his hands on his knees, as if he's going to do a parlor scene. You claim that Brazen showed up at your threshold, that you put him back together. You believe there is a chance that this was the result of a hydrangea's ambush, and now you are caring for him. And now there are 2 of us who know. My question for you is, why not just leave him outside to die? Surely that would be more simple. Isn't there a possible risk that housing a wounded Brazen in your cottage could get you in trouble?
Not if I turn him in as soon as the rains pass.
Is that what you want to do, Eol?
I don't know. The last few years, there's a new magistrate that covers this region that I've been assigned to from time to time. I don't know that I would like to see him before I am called upon, or that I would want to bring his scrutiny onto the region here. But I didn't want to see him. Grandfather, do you really think so little of me that you believe I would just let somebody pass on when I had the capability to help?
I know for certain that you would never do such a thing, Eol. These questions are not about your virtue. They're not about your values. They're not about you as a moral operator in the universe. These questions are about your motives and what you're going to do next.
Does the name Sinkari mean anything to you, or the census Sinkari?
Andis's very pleasant demeanor immediately drops. Census Sinkari?
Yes. One of the few things he said before gestures to him being uncommon.
His eyes go wide for a moment. Okay. That changes things a lot. That changes things quite a bit, actually. The Census Sankari is a joint order of 2 of the major operating arms of the Empire that handle keeping track of important pieces of information throughout the Empire. The Vampire Lords, you know the Vampire Lords and the Counts, they rarely leave their palaces. The census Sincari are the people that go out and keep track of things for them. So census, from to count, Sincari, order of counting, basically.
So they're from the Administratum, or?
Yes,
You said it was joints.
the Ordo Principium as well.
Always delightful when those two together.
One of the few places where they overlap cooperatively. The census Sincari are honor-bound to protect their information by any means necessary.
Could this brazen be a member of the Order?
No. You have to be turned.
I see. Andis?
Yeah?
Grandfather, it may become quite dangerous if you remain here.
Oh, I am well aware of that. Did anyone see this brazen come to this cottage?
I believe so.
Hmm.
Who do we owe our loyalty to?
You've been listening to Game Woven, a creative world-building collective building a world one game at a time. We are currently introducing our characters for our Cosmic Century Knights game. Cosmic Century Knights is a fantasy adventure RPG created by James D'Amato and Andrew Mrzejewski. If you like what we're doing, please go over and support us on Patreon at patreon.com/GameWoven. You can also find us on social media, and you can support us through our parent network over at patreon.com/OneShot. It's also a good place to go if you are looking for new shows to listen to, because we are in excellent company.